And let's take some opportunity to I'm going to say spruce up this channel. My first attempt to spruce up the channel was last year in the fall of 2020, and I was on a mountain that could have had spruce but didn't have a lot of them, and they were a little wet and a little hard to video that day. But I did a quite extensive clip on balsam fir on Slide Mountain, about 200 miles to my south. My current location is in Franklin County, New York, almost in the Canadian border here. This is in the Adirondack Park, which is an incredible area, 6 million acres of land that has been preserved forever wild. Not all that is public land, but it's a purchase area where at least a third of it is in public ownership. And the land I'm on today is actually owned by Paul Smith's College, which is a school locally famous for its environmental studies and forestry. And this is the Visitors Interpretive Center with a network of trails for skiing, snowshoeing, and hiking. And what a better place to learn the spruces than on what's called the Boreal Life Trail. So plants that are from the boreal region are the ones that go all the way across Canada into Alaska. And some of the spruces do that. The white spruce and the black spruce do. Today we're going to study red spruce and black spruce. And white spruce is going to have to wait. There's not a lot of it in this area. But the red spruce is common in the area I'm trying to cover by this channel at elevation. So even all the way down to North Georgia and North Carolina, it's at elevation. I'm not sure about Georgia, but I know it's above 4,000 feet in North Carolina. I backpacked down there many times. And here's an average size red spruce. They can get a lot bigger than this. This guy's about 16 inches around, with our bark that looks like potato chips, kind of all in a pattern of potato chips. And it does have a reddish color. And a plant that it's often in community with, I studied last year on Slide Mountain. And that's our balsam fir with these sap blisters on the younger trees. As the tree gets older, it kind of gets a smooth appearance but loses the sap blisters at the surface. So the balsam fir and the red spruce are often found in community with each other at the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountains and the Adirondack Mountains and the Green Mountains. And we're not even up that high in elevation right here, but this is a sand plain here. The soil is low in nutrients, so these plants are well adapted to this environment. If we go up a few hundred feet onto some better soils, you actually start getting more hardwood trees until the climate becomes much colder, above 3,000 feet. And then we're back to seeing the spruce, the red spruce, and the balsam fir. And I'm going to be adding some footage to that area. Got several days to work on this, and I'm going to be going up some of the higher elevations, weather permitting, in the next few days. Let's continue on this Boreal Life Trail, take a better look at these spruces, including the black spruce, which only grows at this elevation with its feet wet in these bogs and wetlands that are common in this area. You won't find it on the better drained soils at this elevation. And in the return leg of this Boreal Life Trail here at the Paul Smith College Visitors Interpretive Center, we're doing the trail clockwise. So this is on the back half. And I've got a great comparison here between a mature red spruce on the left here with its bark that can resemble small potato chips, even kind of resembles that of a black cherry, bark alone. Nothing else resembles a black cherry. And an eastern hemlock, which seem to be doing quite well in this area. The harsh winters are keeping the woolly adelgid from causing the carnage, if you will, that you see in lower elevations and warmer climates. So that may save the eastern hemlock in the colder parts of the Adirondacks. But this guy's got more long ridges, long plates, and some even furrows between it. So it's less like potato chips and more like long plates, about the size of a hot dog bun, perhaps. You can tell I haven't had my lunch yet. I'm thinking about food. And what we've got on the forest floor here are the cones from both trees. And these trees are often found growing near each other. So let's take a look at these cones. They're both just littering the floor here by the hundreds. I've got that US currency quarter in there for scale. And right in front of that quarter, we've got a red spruce cone about 1.5 inches long. And just above it to its right, kind of blending in here, is our eastern hemlock cone, which is half that size, if that much, maybe 1/2 to 5/8 inch long. Much smaller cone, even though the trees get quite large. And let's continue on with studying the red spruce. Again, we're on a more of an upland situation here with well-drained soil. And the needles on the spruces, the black and the red spruce, are about the same length. Guidebook says that they're shorter on the black spruce. I'm not finding that today, but there may be situations where they are, but they're not that much different in length. But let's zoom in a second. What we are going to notice is the luster or shininess of these red spruce needles and the color. It's a very even color. It's a medium green and quite shiny, so it's lustrous. And the branch underneath these needles is evenly colored. It's an orangish color throughout the length of these, at least on these saplings here, and pretty much that's where you're going to find spruce needles to observe. Usually the mature trees, because they're in community, they often, the lower branches get shaded out. This area had a little blowdown here. Made it easy for these spruce cones to turn into seedlings here. Here's another one here. Again, look at the branch there. Underneath those needles, it's a real even orangish color, orangish brown color. We'll compare that with the black spruce in a few minutes here. So it's a nice even color. And just for comparison, another tree that has an even color on the branches of this sapling is our eastern hemlock. But it does not have the needles that are, these needles are flat with the 2 white stripes on the back there, just like that of the balsam fir. And these needles on the spruces are not flat, but they're you can't really tell by looking at them, but they actually have 4 sides and do not have a flat appearance. We'll just take a second and look at these balsam fir needles as well. So we've got a red spruce in the middle here, an eastern hemlock with flat needles that are fairly short, about 1/2 inch long, and then you got your balsam fir on the left here with needles that are about almost 1 inch long. They too will have the 2 white stripes on the back. So the trick is how long the needles are, and also the branching. On the hemlock, they come off in a staggered pattern. And on the spruces and on the balsam fir, they come off opposite each other. So just like when we're learning our hardwood trees, that's one other method we can use to tell which tree is which if there's any doubt. And this Boreal Life Trail here at the Paul Smith College Visitors Interpretive Center is about 1/3 boardwalk and 2/3 on some well-drained soils. And so we walk down into this lowland here. We've still got some eastern hemlock here, which can grow in wetlands, but it usually doesn't grow too far into the wetlands. It's not exclusive to well-drained soils, but that's where you often find it. And then we've got our red spruce here, about 1.5 feet in diameter, reaching full height, 60, 80 feet. And look in the background there, you see some spruces that look like they have church spires on top. Actually, those are balsam firs that look like they have church spires on top. But keep that in mind because our black spruce can often get that form as well. And we've got some growing a little further out this boardwalk. And just a couple hundred yards down the boardwalk, this becomes almost dominant with black spruce. And if you've ever been to the far north in Canada and Alaska, this is often what you see for forest, even if it's not a wetland. The nature of the soils in that area is conducive to black spruce, and red spruce is pretty much southeast Canada and the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountains. It does not go all the way across Canada like the white and the black spruce. But let's take a look at some of the branches and foliage or needles of the black spruce. And you can see, as we zoom in here, less luster, so it's more of a bluish green color. It's not quite as shiny. And yes, the very youngest growth has that orangish color on the branch underneath it, but you don't have to go back too far and it becomes a brown or a gray color. Got another example right here. Now, we've got some late summer sun hitting this, and it does shine a little, but the color is definitely more of a bluish green. These needles are less than a ½ inch, and those on the red spruce were about a ½ inch long, so not a big difference. I can say this looks like a cat that's gotten startled and his tail is bushed up at the end here, at least. So the needles are coming out in all directions there. And the red spruce is a little less like that. But I'd say the color is an obvious difference. The habitat with wet soils here that require us to be on a boardwalk. And the form of these trees. As they get older, they lose all their lower branches. They break off, they die, and you only have life at the top of the tree. We'll look at the cones in just a minute. There's some smaller trees out here that actually still have cones, even though they're quite small in size. And while we're learning the black spruce, let's take a look at another tree that often grows in community with it, just like the red spruce and the balsam and Fraser firs grow in community at the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountains and Green Mountains, White Mountains, and Adirondacks. Our tamarack often grows in the same wetlands with wet soil as the black spruce. So again, here's our black spruce with those bluish green needles that are fairly short. And right next to it is our tamarack, which has deciduous needles, or needles that come off, turn a beautiful golden yellow color in the fall and fall off. And the branches are bare for at least half the year. These needles are longer, they're softer to the touch, and on the branch they come off in little tufts, like in clumps. So they all come off in one place, and then there's a space, and then there's another clump. At the end of the branch they don't do that, but still it doesn't really look like a black spruce at all, except that it grows in the same habitat and often side by side with the black spruce. Here's a little bit more of our tamarack here. So they can get quite tall as well as the black spruce. They both can get 50, 60, 80 feet high. Black spruce very rarely get more than a foot in diameter. Usually they're more like 6 or 8 inches around. And let's take a look at the cones of the black spruce tree. About halfway across this section of the boardwalk, which is probably almost a ½ mile long, on the Boreal Life Trail, we've got a black spruce tree here that's not even as tall as I am, and it's already got cones. I'm saying already because most plants don't get cones till they're at least adolescent age, you know, in the teens. And because this is such a challenging place for this tree to grow, this may be a lot older than that. But the cones on top here, those are the black spruce. They're not much bigger than those hemlock cones. They got a few more scales than the hemlock cones. And they're maybe 3/4 of an inch long, a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch long, and just underneath it is our 1½ inch long red spruce cone. So the cones wouldn't confuse you. The bark probably could. We'll show that in just a minute. there is a difference, but it's also very flaky, just like that of the red spruce. A slight color difference. Foliage is a different color and less shiny. And where they grow is probably what's going to give it away, because you just won't find a red spruce growing in these damp environments. And also at the very highest elevations, you won't find red spruce growing, where you can find black spruce growing near tree line in these mountains. And as we continue along the Boreal Life Trail here, got some larger sized black spruces and tamaracks here, reaching 25-30 feet high. This is a pretty tough place for a tree to grow, or grow tall or fast, because it's very high acid soil. We got sphagnum moss creating most of the soil in this bog. But let's look at the bark of these black spruce trees. That's where the name comes from. It's not exactly black, but it's definitely a darker color than that of the red spruce. It's more of a gray color. It does have the flaky appearance. This is getting some late summer sun on it, so it's very well lit. So here's one that's in the shade here. So definitely a darker gray and less of that red appearance, but it's not too obvious. If you had them side by side, you could probably tell. But the form of this black spruce and the place where it's growing helps us determine what kind of spruce it is. And again, they don't get very big around, 6-8 inches. There's my hand for scale. So, and if you cut this guy down, you'd see how slowly it grows. It may be quite old. So it definitely gives this forest here a northern feel. Well, let's continue our study of the red and black spruce trees. The study I did to start this series, the first 15 minutes, was done at about 1,500 foot elevation in habitats that where those trees did well. It's very sandy soil for the red spruce and a bog habitat for the black spruce. We're about 1,000 feet higher than that on the slopes of Algonquin Peak near Lake Placid, New York, heading up to 5,000 feet, weather permitting. And this is mostly beech and maple through here, with some red spruce in the mix, but not dominant. We'll just watch how this forest changes. I'm going to stop about every 500 to 700 feet in elevation and video what we find as the elevation increases and the average temperature gets lower. And at about 3,000 feet on the side of Algonquin Peak, the north side, definitely has a more of an evergreen feel here. We do have quite a bit of paper birch in the area here as well, but there's quite a bit of young red spruce and balsam fir coming in. And when you see these larger paper birches, that means this area had a forest fire probably 50 years ago based on the size of these trees, but you don't find paper birch in forest that has been unburned. So as we go higher, we expect to find more and more of these balsam and red spruce. And eventually the red spruce drops out and the balsam fir continues on. But let's go see if that's true. And at about 4,200 feet, we're in some pretty thin soil up here. So your plant species is not only based on elevation, climate, but also what type of soil is underneath the roots. And this is pretty much bedrock, but we still have our red spruce with the orangish twig underneath these medium green needles that are quite shiny, and plenty of balsam fir. And we're starting to get some views. So forecast today, it kept getting cloudier and cloudier as I planned this, picked this day to do this hike. It kept getting cloudier and cloudier to the point where I was concerned it might be in the clouds at the summit, but so far so good. Let's see if we can beat the remnants of Hurricane Ida, which aren't supposed to rain on this area but could affect the visibility. And after our last stop, I've gotten up almost to the summit of Algonquin Peak. I'm about 100 feet lower than it. And we do have black spruce up here. And there's also some balsam fir, but actually I'm finding more black spruce than balsam fir. So this guy is a survivor. Both the balsam fir and the black spruce can grow almost to the northern limit of trees if you look at the range maps. But there's a little forest of black spruce here, and they're not more than 3 or 4 feet high. And the reason for that is because there's a boulder field and a few ledges here that allow this little pocket here to accumulate snow to that depth. So the depth of the snow determines how tall these trees can get, and once they get above that boulder there, all bets are off. And once they grow higher than the snowpack would accumulate in the wintertime, the harsh winds will desiccate the branches and kill them, and they only grow laterally at that point. So these plants will often even grow sideways. It's called crumolts. When that occurs, that's a form of a tree. And it's like a little miniature forest of black spruce up here. It's kind of neat to look at, and I do find some cones on some of these guys here. We'll zoom in one more time, and there they are. And they're about the size of the black spruce cones I found at the Boreal Life Trail. So this has been a 2-day adventure, learning these trees and finding their unique habitats. And quite an adventure has been for me. We'll soak up the view one more time to Mount Marcy directly ahead of us there, and all these mountains to our south.